Okay, so I know this is a bit unusual. We're making our way from the breakout sessions back to the General Assembly Hall. I hope everyone had a great breakout session and came to some incredibly insightful things. And I'm happy to see everyone who is prompt. These are the, definitely at least the more timely of the folks. As you can see, probably in your program, I'm Jeff Lundy, the head of corporate citizenship research at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I'm going to be giving a presentation today about some research that we are conducting on women entrepreneurs. However, before I do that, I actually want to start my presentation off with an opportunity and a challenge. So first, the opportunity. In a 2009 Ernst & Young report, the CEO of WeConnect, Elizabeth Vasquez, who is attending this conference, in fact, remarked that the network of WeConnect International spent $700 billion on goods and services. She also noted that 1% of this spending, if 1% of this spending were redirected to women-owned businesses, that would obviously mean $7 billion in new development opportunity. And that's just the sizable network of WeConnect. The potential of shifting 1% of the supply chains of all major global companies would obviously be even more impactful. The business community holds in their hands a tremendous opportunity to empower women. Where philanthropy currently provides millions of dollars in sporadic assistance to women entrepreneurs, the purchasing power of large supply chains might provide billions in sustainable impact internationally. I said, though, that we are going to talk about an opportunity and a challenge, and so now the challenge. If you could load the graphic, please. There you go. The graphic behind me is a case example. It represents the workforce of an emerging economy, Mexico. If an international company went to Mexico looking to buy from women suppliers, they would find that 27% of Mexico's workforce is business owners, and here they are on the graphic. But of course, many of these business owners are men. Our hypothetical company wants to empower women, so cutting out the men, we're down to 9.7%. Furthermore, the company would find that most of the women entrepreneurs only employ themselves. To find those that employ a worker other than themselves, we're down to what you now see on the screen, roughly 1%. Truly, though, international corporations typically need large suppliers to fill their orders. Hence, let's say we're looking for companies that employ at least 50 workers. When you take that into account, what you'll find is that only 0.005% of the Mexican workforce is women who employ more than 50 workers. There were originally 20,000 dots actually on that screen, and now we're just down to 1. So put another way, what the women that international companies would like to buy from represent 1/20,000th of the working population of Mexico. At the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, we work with leading companies that care about women's economic empowerment, and neither the opportunity nor the challenge I just mentioned is lost on them. In fact, when the foundation convened companies interested in women's empowerment last year, they said their most pressing question was how to bring international women entrepreneurs into global supply chains. As a result of their request, the foundation set out to study a case example of women entrepreneurs, and we settled on the country of Mexico. Now, we did that for 2 reasons. One, we wanted a sort of 360-degree perspective of one emerging economy. Mexico made a lot of sense. And 2, we knew that Mexico is experiencing surprising amounts of interest in terms of empowering women entrepreneurs. In fact, as we started research, we were surprised to find a very promising study currently in progress by the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, Banorte Mexico, and Value for Women. Because we never want to reinvent the wheel, we're partnering with this group to provide background information that supports a larger project they're conducting in Mexico. We hope that the information we found will help them to ask better questions during their work and will also help to inform the business community with useful context. So after I'm done presenting, we'll actually hear a brief presentation about that research from a representative of Value for Women, Rebecca Fries. But before we do that, let's get back to our study. So we wanted to understand the condition of women entrepreneurs in Mexico. So what did we find? Well, first and foremost, as I've already mentioned, there are real challenges. Much of the literature on women entrepreneurs in Mexico shows that few of them are ready to be suppliers for large international corporations. And our own analysis of the statistics, unfortunately, agrees. What's more, we found that most of Mexico's women entrepreneurs are not in the primary or secondary sectors of the economy. Mostly they're in the tertiary sector of trade, retail, and services. This means that of the already small number of businesswomen in Mexico, most of them are providing services, trading goods, or selling goods to Mexican consumers. Very few of them are extracting and refining materials or manufacturing products, which are the primary interest of international corporate buyers. And these results, unfortunately, are not exclusive to Mexico. In most emerging economies around the world, men outnumber women business owners by large proportions, especially as business size increases. So given our findings about the difficulty of identifying women entrepreneurs, that really just left us two questions. One, how do we find the limited number of women who are ready to be suppliers for major corporations? And two, how do we change the dynamic in emerging economies to create more women entrepreneurs who could become suppliers? So two questions. The first one, about how to find women suppliers, to answer that, basically our goal was to discover the characteristics that identify them. We wanted to know what would be especially different so that we know where to go look for them. And to that end, we analyzed data from Mexico's Federal Statistical Agency, INEGI, to identify where women business owners are concentrated and the features that differentiate them. So to give you an example, one of our findings was that women employing at least 6 workers are significantly more educated than women who do not. Among women with 6 or more workers, 72% of them have college-level education. Among those with fewer workers, only 33% have college-level education. Women with 6 or more workers also have more education than salaried women and women who are unemployed. Hence, we would expect that larger female-owned firms tend to be headed by better educated women. This suggests that the universities of Mexico might be a good place to find women who would eventually head larger firms. Along the same lines, we conducted interviews with experts to hear the institutions in Mexico where they would expect to find women entrepreneurs. Again, our goal was to find those partners that will fruitfully identify women-owned businesses. So to continue with my previous example, we know that successful business women in Mexico tend to be better educated. Following this finding, and I'm going to butcher this, I'm afraid, the EGAD Business School at the Monterrey Institute of Technology was suggested to us as a possible partner for finding women entrepreneurs. On average, women compose 40% of its admitted students, which is a relatively high percentage even by international standards. So this example gives you a flavor for how we answered the first question I raised about finding the limited number of women entrepreneurs who are ready to be big suppliers. The second question I raised about changing the dynamic to create more business women is a bit trickier. To answer that question, our goal was to find the best evidence about what is holding back women entrepreneurs and what corporations might do to overcome these roadblocks. There are obviously many factors holding back business women around the world. However, in our work, we identified several major ones that corporations might tackle. So it's been mentioned here a bunch. It's frequently mentioned, but one of the things is the microfinance gap. It seems like a buzzword, but it truly is a phenomenon that has really important effects. So in a conversation, in fact, with the largest microfinance institution in Mexico, Compartamos Banco, we found that microfinance opportunities in the country top out around $2,000 US, whereas Mexican banks start offering their smallest business loans at $10,000 US. So if you're a growing woman-owned microenterprise, you've really got an issue graduating to a small business. Closing the microfinance gap is an opportunity for corporations to help. For instance, business incubators might be established in the states where women microenterprises are concentrated. So finally, before I turn this over to Rebecca to discuss her project, I do want to end on a positive note. I've spoken a little bit, or kind of harped on the challenges of identifying women entrepreneurs. I should say, though, that there are women entrepreneurs who can likely supply to international businesses right now. Based on 2013 statistics, there are estimated to be nearly 1,000 women executives in Mexico employing more than 50 people in a manufacturing company. It will not be trivial to find 1,000 women amongst 50 million working individuals, but it's not impossible either. Partnering with the right organizations, connecting to the best local institutions and networks, and working with strong NGO partners, international corporations can connect with these 1,000 women to transform their lives, their families, and their communities. Okay, so that about wraps it up. I'm going to turn it over. I did want to say that the point of this presentation is just to give you a glimpse of the research we have coming out. So for those who are interested in learning more, please contact me. Please follow the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation website. And we have one-pagers for the research in your brochures. So thank you. Rebecca?
Thank you, Jeff. It is an honor to be able to hear from so many inspiring leaders in the field today and how you are all spearheading very innovative activities aimed at transforming the situation of women in the world. I'm very humbled to be here among all of you. As Jeff mentioned, I'm Rebecca Fries, Director of Value for Women, and I've been invited to share with all of you an exciting initiative that we are leading in Mexico to support women in the small and growing business sector. Value for Women is a social enterprise. We aim to generate transformational social change through increasing the active participation of women in economic development. We do this by partnering with others to create innovative, collaborative, and cross-sector solutions that promote women's economic leadership. We are currently working in Mexico with Banorte and the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, as well as the IPADE Business School, to create an enabling environment for women entrepreneurs in the small and growing business sector. We're really excited to be kicking off this action-oriented research on the ground in Mexico and to be collaborating with such a diverse and interdisciplinary group of people. What we hope to do, we hope to increase the skills of a wide range of actors for investing in women-led enterprise. We call this wide range of actors an ecosystem, which all of you have probably heard before, that term. And we refer to investors, banks, accelerators and incubators, policymakers, corporations, academia, NGOs, foundations, as well as, of course, women entrepreneurs. We are seeing the need to build bridges among these sectors and between the private and public sectors. The Aspen Network naturally brings this ecosystem together as it aims to build bridges, foster partnerships, and build all of our abilities to work with small and growing businesses globally. Now in Mexico, through focus groups, we're asking women what helped them at different stages of their growth and what held them back from growing more. From the findings of the research, we will work to develop a basic gender sensitivity training for investors, banks, and capacity developers like incubators and accelerators. We will also develop recommendations for policy change in Mexico and create blueprints for future collaborative projects. These findings will also lay the groundwork for the launching of the Banorte Foundation, which will focus its funding on women entrepreneurs in Mexico. Now, we all know that barriers still exist for women in terms of accessing finance and opportunities to develop their skills. We've heard from women about these difficulties, and we know that the lack of access to assets contributes to weak financing opportunities. We also know that social norms and beliefs often keep women tied to traditional activities in the household, which limits their potential to be entrepreneurs and to generate an income. Many of us have worked in the sector for so long that this seems obvious. We know the complexities of the challenges women face. Often we assume that everyone gets it, and if they don't, it's because they haven't seen yet the benefits of inclusion. Well, we think we know women, and that banks, for example, know finance. And through our work, Value for Women is asking, what if others, such as financial institutions, were open to engaging with women in the way that we do? And what if there were open channels for communication between social organizations and financial institutions? And what if we could use all of our knowledge to inform the way that we do business and the way that we reach women? Our research will help everyone in this ecosystem to move from gender-neutral practices to inclusivity. We're actually not asking revolutionary questions, but we're taking the solutions and applying them across the board. We hope to see the effects ripple across sectors and across diverse institutions to achieve results such as specific funds for women aimed at closing the finance gap, changes to outreach practices of financial institutions, things like anti-discrimination policies and trainings for personnel at companies and organizations, and finally, new public policies that favor women's entrepreneurship on issues such as procurement. Eventually, we hope that our collaborative effort will help build the small and growing business sector internationally, in addition to creating an enabling environment for women entrepreneurs in Mexico. But for now, we're asking the question, what new things can we accomplish with a common language about women's needs? And what will a panoramic view of women's struggles in Mexico, shared across sectors, show us about how we can address their needs through partnerships and giving actors at all levels the tools that they need to make change? We hope that the answers will continue to break down barriers for women around the world. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kara Valakai. I am the Director of Issue Networks for Women's Economic Empowerment at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And I'm so thrilled to have this wonderful panel here today. Really, really fascinating, dynamic women. Before we start with you, I wanted to just remind us that today we're talking about turning inspiration into action. And the idea behind that is I want you all to feel inspired. And I want you all not to only feel inspired, but be inspired to act. And when I think about that, I often think about what are the challenges and how we can change challenge into opportunity. And so why I'm mentioning this is this panel is called Financial Inclusion and Literacy. And the idea is that right now, there's approximately 2.5 billion people, 2.5 billion adults that are excluded from the formal financial system. So that means they do not have the same access to credit and access to financial services that we have. So I wanted to start this panel by thinking about how we can change this challenge into an opportunity. And so I would like to introduce my very wonderful panelists today. We have, to my left, we have Mary Ellen Iskandarian. She is the president and CEO of Women's World Banking. We have Michelle Green. She is the senior vice president and head of corporate responsibility for the New York Stock Exchange Euronext. We have Erica Karp, who is the founder and CEO of Cornerstone Capital Group. And we have Jeanette Farron Astorga, the vice president of corporate social responsibility for Ant Inc. And so I'm going to start this off with just asking this big question, how all of you in your own organizations think about the challenge of 2.5 billion people being excluded from the financial system and how you see that as an opportunity. So I'll start with you, Mary Ellen.
Thank you so much, Kara. It's great to be here. Am I close enough to the mic? Bring it closer? Okay, thank you, sir. So I think the thing that I am most excited about working in this field at this time is that I think we can genuinely say that for the first time, we have a combination of factors that have come together so that 2.5 billion people, and remember, more than 1 billion of those are women, the factors that have come together really make that gap not as much of a problem or a challenge as it has traditionally been, but it is a market opportunity for every savvy financial service provider, mobile phone operator, insurance company to be embracing. And I think I'm looking forward to our conversation today because I think everybody at the table has a different take on that. Now, as you pointed out, there is this great very, very significant percentage of the world's population that does not have access to financial services, and women are generally more disadvantaged than men. Globally, 46% of the world's women have a bank account versus 55% of the world's men, and the population that Women's World Banking is particularly concerned with, those women living on $2 a day and less, they are 28% less likely to have access to financial services. In the OECD countries alone, this one always just blows me away, the OECD countries, so, you know, the rich men's club, so to speak, rich countries club, we have only 12% of women have loans in their own name. So there's if there is a gap globally, if we could address that gap by addressing women, you're a very, very long way down the road to meeting that opportunity. Women's World Banking is, do a few minutes of a commercial break here, is a 35-year-old global NGO that from its very inception has been dedicated to addressing financial product and service needs of low-income women. And we came into being at more or less the same time that the microfinance movement did. But I think what has always distinguished us, and I think is an important piece of this conversation to keep in mind, is that we're not just talking about access to credit. The last speaker made it very clear that those are issues, and I'm sure many people throughout the day have raised that issue. But women need access to savings accounts, insurance policies, leases, pensions, everything that you and I take for granted as being something that our bank will offer us. Poor women need as well. And perhaps they need it even more since women always play that role in the household of being the caregiver, the provider, very often the financial security gateway to the rest of the family. And so things like savings accounts, which provide a security against emergencies, things like health insurance and other insurance policies that, again, provide that safety net in the face of an emergency illness or the death of a spouse, are so critical to families making their way out of poverty. So at Women's World Banking, we're very dedicated to working with financial institutions so that they can design products that meet some of the very explicit needs. And women, as any of you know who've done any focus groups or spent some time with women in the field, they're very clear about what it is they need and how they need to see products designed and the attributes they need to have in order for them to even sort of bother taking them up. And it's very much in financial institutions' best interests to focus on them. Our research has made it very clear that women have better repayment rates on their loans. They have higher savings rates when they do accumulate savings in a savings account. They are far more likely, both in developed countries and developing countries, to buy multiple products from a financial institution than a man is. So the financial institution that pays attention to some of those product attributes that women are looking for can really find a very, very good client base. And so what are some of those attributes? Very, very quickly, women everywhere, and I don't need to tell the women in this room any more than the women that we're working with in the field, are time-starved, and they really put quite a premium on convenience. And one of my favorite studies, it's not one that Women's World Banking did, but there was a set of financial diaries that 200 families in Malawi did. And it was a bank that had mobile banking units that went on a regular schedule around the different villages. And the men would spend up to $7.90 in bus fare to go into town to deposit amounts far less than that bus fare because, it's Thursday and the van doesn't come till Friday. Whereas the women said, I can wait till Friday. I'll deposit my money when the van comes to town. The convenience is very highly prized by women. And so banks need to take that into consideration when they're designing products. The other thing that women again and again and again tell us they really value in products is confidentiality and being able to know that when they are saving, the men in their families, the husbands, the sons, the fathers, don't necessarily know that they're saving or what they're saving toward. There was a bank in Kenya earlier, I guess it was at the end of last year, that in a rush towards financial inclusion, created a program that if families had joint savings accounts, they would remove the ATM fees from this particular account. And so you saw immediately a 40% increase in deposits by men, and the women took all their money out of the bank. They didn't want that joint account. They really wanted that independence. And so the women are telling us some very, very specific things that they want to see in their financial products and services. And so I think given this market opportunity, to get back to your words, it's important for us to be always designing products with that in mind. And what's particularly exciting, again, in the work that we're doing, is if you design a good product for women that is easy, it's convenient, it takes care of the confidentiality, the documentation requirements aren't onerous, you're going to find a male market for that product as well. We've been doing some work in rural Paraguay with designing products explicitly destined for women farmers. But the bank that we're working with only had really been lending to male farmers up till now and had been very good at tracking customer satisfaction, did a very good follow-up with customers. So we only have the customer satisfaction scores for the men customers. they love this product that is the so-called women's product because it's easier to understand. We took away a lot of the difficult documentation requirements. We required a lot less collateral. So there's a lot that can be done for both men and women as long as you're addressing those needs of women. And I would be remiss if I didn't touch on one last thing as we move to the other panelists, and that's financial education. Because as we get into more complicated ideas. Many of my partner institutions in the field will tell me they'll launch a life insurance policy, and then their clients will come to them at the end of the year and say, well, I didn't die this year, so can I have my premium back? So it's important as we start introducing things like insurance policies, savings account that have compound interest. It's absolutely critical that we explain how these products work, because we know that once the women understand how they work, they are just as fast an adopter as men are, both for the products and increasingly now, and very excitingly, for the technology that's coming into the sector and allowing us to reach more remote populations, poorer segments than we ever have before. So I guess just in closing, I'd like to say that there is this tremendous opportunity for the institution that thinks creatively about products, that thinks creatively about education. Women's World Banking has very successfully worked with some television programs, both in the Dominican Republic and in Kenya, in weaving financial education themes through the plot lines. And the results we've seen in the Dominican Republic after only 18 weeks of a program, we saw a 38% increase in new accounts opened, new savings accounts opened, and a 74% increase in the balance that women were maintaining in those accounts. So the power of the social communications for financial education is enormous. And so I think if we bring all of our passion and our creativity and our innovation into thinking about reaching this heretofore ignored population, financial inclusion can really be a thing of the past and is only an opportunity for us.
Thank you so much. I mean, I was just in another panel and we talked a lot about competition. It sounds like you have a similar thought that product design really needs to be competitive. It needs to compete with each other in order to be successful. Okay, Michelle.
So I'm going to push the opportunity theme one step further, and I'm going to say that this is not just an opportunity, it is a strategic imperative for every business to financially empower women. I work at the New York Stock Exchange. I wear two hats there. One is I run our foundation, and we do a lot of work around financial inclusion, a lot of work around financial education. And the other is in the corporation, which are separate legal entities. And in the corporation, I run our corporate responsibility. I am going to very purposefully take off my foundation hat because this is not just about philanthropy. And what I want to argue in my few minutes here today is that we need to make every business see this as not just about philanthropy. We need to reach the non-believers who see it as just about philanthropy and convince them that it's actually a strategic imperative. So this is not to say that the philanthropy isn't important and we've got to keep doing it and it's absolutely critical. It is, for sure. But what I want to argue for right now is that we can't solve it with philanthropy alone. If we want to financially empower women, we have to bring the private sector on board, and we have to have them believing they're not doing it to be nice, they're not doing it for philanthropic reasons, they're doing it because if they want to survive long term, if they want to seize competitive advantage and seize opportunity, they need to get behind financial empowerment of women. So let me give some of the arguments that I would make to say that that's applicable to every company. First, I'd start with the macro. There are types of companies that will go into emerging markets or to developing markets for the long term, that will be making significant infrastructure investments, and that want a country that is going to be stable and grow. We've heard the statistics all day long. How do you help a country grow? How do you help a country be more stable? You invest in the girls and you invest in the women. So for the countries that are thinking, for the countries that are growing, for the companies that are going in and thinking about a long-term commitment, you have to be thinking about investing in those girls and women. When you look at the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Report, you see that where there is greater parity across every type of part of the economy, of the governing structure, where women are playing a greater role, countries are more competitive. So we know that getting women in there makes countries more competitive. So when we're talking on a macro level, you got to invest in the women, you got to invest in the girls. Now, for a lot of companies, the macro level just isn't close enough to home. That's not going to inspire them. That's not going to get them to invest. Okay, to them I say, look at your emerging markets. And we've been talking about this again all day. You know, the she economy, women as the next emerging market. It has been our theme throughout the day, is that women are a growing marketplace. And if you look at what companies say about what they need to succeed in the next decade, 82% of companies say that they need to grow in emerging and developing markets. Well, again, what is the key to growing in emerging and developing markets? It's financially empowering women. It's giving women the tools that they need to go out there and become consumers. Because the women will invest in their families. And again, we all know the statistics. The women will invest in families, they'll invest in their kids. That's your investment in your future human capital. That's your investment in your growing marketplace. So you need to be thinking about new markets, and if you need to grow, well, you need to be thinking about women and investing in women and bringing them into the financial sector. Then there's some specific opportunities as well. You heard Mary Ellen talk about some of the opportunities for financial services companies. That is a no-brainer. If you are a financial services company, you better be thinking about how to meet the needs of women who aren't part of this sector yet. And not just in developing countries, here in the US as well. Everywhere, you should be thinking about this as a market opportunity. And it's not just the obvious financial products that we've talked about in the past. There's a whole world of transformation going on, and you heard some of this in the technology panel as well. There's a whole world of transformation going on in the way that we deliver financial services and in the new opportunities to tailor financial services to specific needs. So when we think about women's needs, it's become easier than ever to tailor those products to meet the needs of women. So financial services companies better be thinking about this. But it's not just them either. When we start thinking about companies that go into marketplaces where women are influencers, if you're talking about household products, women are influencers. If you're talking about women who go as the sales force for many of these companies in emerging economies. And what we've seen from company after company, Tupperware, Unilever, on and on, what we've seen is that when they provide their women in their sales force with some basic business training and with some financial education, sales go up. It's good for the company, it's good for the women. So there are so many opportunities where we can invest in women's financial education, and it's helpful to the companies. For those of you who work in the corporate responsibility field, you're probably familiar with the term creating shared value. This is a theory that Michael Porter has advanced about great intersections where doing what's good for the company also can be doing what's good for the community, in this case, for women. And I think that we have lots of opportunities to identify where those intersections take place for every kind of company. There's not one answer for every company. It's going to look different for every company, but for every company, there is a way that financially empowering women is going to advance their strategic objectives and help them to grow. But I think probably when we look at this from the perspective of the company itself, where companies should really be focusing, in my opinion, is their employees. Because women are their employees. And there is so much opportunity here. And let's start with the leadership. If you look at companies today, if you look at the Fortune 1000 companies, less than 5% of CEOs are women. Less than 5%. That's crazy. If you look at board membership in the biggest companies around the world, again, now you have quotas in some countries where they're forced to get up to 40%, but here in the US and among the major corporations, you'll see that number is below 20%, well below 20%, and it's not moving. We're not making progress. It's staying where it is. And this is despite all sorts of evidence about companies that have significant women's board membership and have significant gender diversity in their leadership outperforming financially. And we've seen it again and again on lots of different financial parameters. Those companies outperform. Diversity creates better decision making, it creates better boards, it creates better senior leadership, yet we're still not where we need to be. So this is the broad term of financial inclusion, but we need to include women in leadership and in the top levels of our companies. But then we also need to think about financially empowering women all the way throughout our companies and throughout our supply chains. And Jeanette will talk a little bit more about the supply chain piece, so I'll focus a little more on the employer piece. But when you look at women employees, I think every employee needs to get a little more financial education, and that employers could do more to help all of their employees. But again, the opportunity is greater for women. And we'll have something here that I will call the gas station paradigm. And the reason I'll call it that is because when you look at financial knowledge, and Anna Maria Lusardi from George Washington University has done some great research showing that this is true across countries, across cultures. Women both do worse in terms of their actual financial knowledge and have less confidence in their financial capabilities. And this starts very young. By high school, there's huge differences, and we never catch up. The flip opportunity, positive side of that is when you put I don't know as one of the options when you're asking financial questions, the men will confidently guess wrong, and the women will admit they don't know. And I call it the gas station paradigm because it's the same thing as the men won't go to the gas station and ask for directions. But what this means is that there's an opportunity. The women know they don't know. They want to learn. They're open to the financial education. And so we have a real opportunity to give women that knowledge and to give them that confidence that they can make good financial decisions for themselves. And that plays out very differently for different employees in different countries, in different environments, whether it's the type of control of their own savings account that Mary Ellen was talking about, or whether it's here in the US, giving women more access to financial services, because even here, we're way behind. But every company has an opportunity to offer this as a benefit to their employees. And we're seeing increasing evidence that for companies that do it, there's increased productivity. We've seen numbers that say here in the US, employees spend on average 28 hours per month of work time dealing with their own personal finances. And the estimate is that companies are losing $5,000 per employee per year because people are stressed about their finances. So if companies can help them become less stressed, help them spend less time during work thinking about those things, they'll become more productive. It can reduce absenteeism. It can greatly increase loyalty and morale. If your company has helped you become more financially secure, has provided you with services and with knowledge that helps you get better financial control of your life, that's something that you don't forget, and you become pretty loyal to that company. And again, that's happening everywhere from, we've worked with Mary Ellen and their team on some terrific work that they're doing with factory workers in emerging countries, and we've also worked with Citigroup and their employees here in the US. So it really runs the whole gamut. There is an opportunity to financially empower women in every country and in every company. So the message I want to leave you with today is keep up the philanthropy. It is critical. It is part of the solution. But let's tell the private sector that they need to get on board too. And any company that doesn't do this is going to get left behind.
Very, very true. Erica, do you want to add on to that?
Where do I start? Mary Ellen, Michelle, we are on precisely the same page. It was a man the other day when I was trying to fill up my car at the gas station who put gasoline into my brand new Clean-Tech diesel vehicle. I had tried to fill it up. It was New Jersey. He said, I have to pump the gas. And of course, he put gasoline into my diesel engine. That was a man that did that. I really, really would rather have pumped that gas myself.
Different gas station paradigm.
If anyone wants to know which station it was, we'll talk. There's one thing I would want to say with regard to the confluence of things going on right now that Mary Ellen referred to. In the global capital markets, we are in absolutely unprecedented times because of this confluence of events. We talked about the OECD, the richest nations. Well, one thing that's unprecedented is the extent to which we have economic concentration in the private sector that we have never seen before. In the OECD, of the listed companies, tens of thousands of listed companies that trade, 1,000 of them represent about 7.8% of all the revenues in the entire OECD. 1,000 of those companies represent about 8% of the jobs in the entire OECD, and we're talking about 1,000 of 50, 60,000 listed companies there. That kind of economic concentration is unprecedented. And there's a lot of other stuff that's unprecedented. The extent to which we are in a regulated environment and there's regulatory scrutiny post-crisis, unprecedented. The extent to which social media gives a level of transparency that the world has never known before. Transparency is absolutely transformational when it comes to business models. This kind of transparency is unprecedented. Big data. The extent to which the massive amounts of noise that investors are trying to absorb as they decide what to buy and sell, the extent of that information is unprecedented. And the extent to which big data turns that noise into insight, that's unprecedented. Confluence. Each piece of the capital markets, the asset owners, the asset managers, the investment banks, the exchanges, the accountants, the listing agencies, the standard-setting bodies, the NGOs, the academics, it's unprecedented to see an alignment towards what I refer to as corporate sustainability. Actually, I refer to it as corporate excellence, all right? Corporate excellence is the relentless pursuit of material progress towards a more regenerative and inclusive economy. That's corporate excellence. Corporate sustainability is the term that some people use. I like that too. The reality is every piece of the capital markets is now aligned in an unprecedented way, aligned towards the systematic implementation of analytics that allow us to look at environmental, social, and governance factors in the investment process, whether it's a corporation who is looking to make investment decisions, hiring, supply chain decisions, build or buy decisions, or whether it's an investor who needs to say, okay, do I buy A or do I buy B? All things held equal, which never happens. I mean, an economist has many, many hands, right? If all things were held equal in an investment process, company A or company B, and let's say company A happens to have greater diversity in its supply chain, all right? Company A has greater diversity in its supply chain, and everything else about A and B are the same. I buy A as an investor. I buy A because it's about better opportunity and better risk management. So when it comes to the macroeconomic imperative of corporate excellence, corporate sustainability, the time has come. And I'm going to take this opportunity, because we're in the General Assembly room, to quote from a Talmudic scholar, Hillel. Hillel said, "If I am not for me, then who will be? But if I am only for me, then what am I? And if not now, then when?" Now. The time is absolutely now. And given the macroeconomic imperatives, the scale of the issues that we have when it comes to healthcare, education, climate change, infrastructure, these are huge issues, and huge problems don't get solved sequentially. They get solved by multiple parallel initiatives going on at the same time during a confluence of events. Now. All right, Lincoln talked about the fierce urgency of now. Actually, I'm sorry, that was Martin Luther King. The fierce urgency of now. I was thinking of the movie. I think that was Daniel Day-Lewis, right? Anyway, now really is the time, because we are in a very unusual, unprecedented, well-aligned place for capitalism to do what it is supposed to do, which is send money to good businesses, to sustainable businesses, to excellent businesses, for investors to systematically understand how do you look at environmental, social, and governance factors in the investment process. And I'll say one thing about financial literacy and inclusion. Financial literacy. Let's talk about the new financial literacy. If an analyst, portfolio manager, chief investment officer, any asset manager, any asset owner, any investment banker, buy side, sell side, any student, if you do not systematically integrate environmental, social, and governance factors into your investment process, you are financially illiterate. So let's talk about the new financial literacy, and let's do some serious ESG enhanced analytics, and let's have a better form of capitalism.
Well, thank you, Kara, for inviting me to be a part of this incredible panel. And I have to say that I wholeheartedly agree with what my esteemed colleagues have shared. I fully support and subscribe to those beliefs. And I'm excited to be here representing the private sector and addressing how we also acknowledge the challenge, but also have some ideas around opportunities that I'm excited to share with everyone today. So first, I'd just like to share, we are thrilled to be here celebrating International Women's Day and contributing to this important conversation that we've had all day around how the private sector can contribute. And at Ann Inc., as a company that supports women, we wholeheartedly believe that it is our mission to empower women all over the world to live their best lives every day. Through our brands, and you may know us, so we have plenty of women in the room who I'm sure are familiar with our brands, Ann Taylor and Loft, we are providing women with great quality fashion, but we are engaging our global associates to fulfill that mission through our shared values and our strong corporate values. So in the context of today's forum, I think it's important to give you a few stats about Ann Inc. and who we are. First and foremost, we have over 20,000 plus associates, 94% of whom are women. We have 100% of our clients are women. Our CEO, Kay Krill, is one of the few female CEOs in the group of the Fortune 1000 companies, and women represent a third of our board. But importantly for this conversation, especially around the supply chain, is that women represent over 70% of the workers who make our apparel every day. And our business is clearly dependent on those women. So in the spirit of today's conference theme, Take Action, I'm honored to share with everyone Ann Inc.'s next step in our journey to inspire and connect with women globally. So today at Ann Inc., we've announced an exciting new goal through our corporate social responsibility platform known as Responsibly Ann. And we are committed to launching the 100,000 Women Commitment, which is our promise to empower 100,000 women in our global supply chain by funding health and financial literacy training in factories. And in the manufacturing sector, we see this as such a strategic imperative because we know that women still face a myriad of barriers to living healthy and empowered lives. And specifically, we see that as related to the lack of health knowledge and lack of access to financial services. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, Michelle. It is a strategic imperative to address women at the base of the pyramid. And for us at Ann Inc., the business case is quite clear. When we support financial literacy, we're not only supporting and driving our core values, but we truly believe that healthy and financially empowered women in our global supply chain and in our contract factories is inextricably linked to higher productivity and to a more sustainable supply chain. So I'd like to share just two key examples of how we are fulfilling our goal to drive health and financial literacy training to 100,000 women over the next 5 years. So first is through collaboration, and we heard a lot of examples this morning about how collaboration and cross-company collaboration is so critical to really creating sustainable change. Well, we're really excited to announce a new strategic partnership with nonprofit BSR, and we have our partners from BSR here in the room today. And we'll be working with BSR to deploy their Her Project model across our supply chain factories, ultimately impacting almost all of the women who make our apparel over the next 5 years. And some of you may be familiar with the Her Project. It is a public-private partnership that was recognized as a leading innovation by the UN Every Woman, Every Child initiative, which Ambassador Milan Verveer so graciously praised this morning in her remarks. And the model drives for in-factory programs to empower female workers with health and financial literacy training. The second way we will drive this and meet our goal is by working in close partnership with our suppliers. And herein, we unlock the big opportunities. So we're proud to work with our partners that share our commitment to women. And it's important to give you the context that at Ann Inc., over 75% of our apparel is concentrated and produced with our top suppliers. So we have an opportunity to use that strong partnership with our supply chain to drive our commitment. So our suppliers support this by allowing us to use their factories as a platform and as a foundation for the training, where we provide in-factory education on topics such as budgeting, savings, using financial services like bank accounts, and even training the women workers on how to apply for and use an ATM card. So with these tools in their arsenals, women are able to properly account for their earnings, and ultimately they're more equipped to build a solid foundation for themselves and their future. So through our HER project pilots that we've already conducted, we've seen incredible returns. So we found that our suppliers are starting to realize improved employee productivity, reduced turnover, reduced absenteeism. They just have more engaged women working for their factories. And when you measure that, really a decline in turnover and absenteeism is extremely important for our suppliers. It's time and it's money. So the empowerment also directly results by providing financial literacy. Well, that leads to just higher product quality. And there we see tremendous opportunities when it comes to giving value, both back to our suppliers, but also to our clients and our brand. So really, when you think about it, the HER project model truly is a win, win, win. It's a win for the women, it's a win for our suppliers, and it's a win for our business as well. So ultimately, our 100,000 women commitment, we're thrilled to announce it and to share it with all of you today, but it is the way that we believe could be one solution for our company on how to build a sustainable supply chain while having a tremendous impact on the women we depend on every day.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I do want to open it up to Q&A because I'm sure there's a lot of questions for you, but I'm going to ask one question before that. And based really off of what Jeanette said about understanding the impact of what HER Finance does for her suppliers, I was wondering if all of you could discuss in this nature of having big data and having access to data, how data has shown you the impact of your work and the impact on women's lives beyond just financial services. How else does it change women's lives? And what data is missing? What other research do we need to do? What other studies do we need to do to understand how best we can impact women's lives? Who would like to start? Would you like to start?
Well, I think for us, that's really at the crux of the whole matter. I mean, yes, I think we've painted a pretty clear picture for you why financial inclusion is important, but then what's the so what? And what we're starting to see, and there's still so much more research left to be done, but we're starting to see that, for example, women who have loans in their own names and financial education to go with it and savings accounts in their own name are more likely to vote, and their daughters will vote. And interestingly, they'll even stand for election at a much greater rate. We're doing some work currently. It's a 3-year research project, so I hope to be able to come back and tell you the research, looking at whether women who have savings accounts in their own name are more or less subject to intimate partner violence in their own homes, and looking at some of the other health impacts of having that safety net of a savings account. The piece of research I mentioned to Kara earlier that we're sort of desperately looking to fund is we've done some wonderful work in creating savings accounts for girls in many of the countries in which we work, and the girls are always very, very clear in saying the reason they are saving is for their education. I would like more than the anecdotal evidence we have to be able to tell you that when a girl has money in her savings account in her own name, she is more likely to use that for school fees when her parents may no longer be willing to pay those school fees, and she's staying in secondary school longer. I don't have that data yet, but that would be one of the gaps that we're looking to fill. So being able to answer what the so what is, having the financial product service inclusion, what is the greater impact on that woman or that girl's well-being in her life in general?
I'll pick up on my business case arguments. So we have a lot of the data, and I talked about a bunch of it that's already there. I think what I would like to see is more of the ROI arguments to be made about these types of investments, because I think businesses track, for example, businesses can track things like the impact of their brand and the value of their brand. Well, if you can track that, you can certainly track the value of more loyal employees or increased morale. So while we have the numbers on the things that are obvious numbers, I'd like to see us start tracking the full ROI on these types of investments, because I think it's huge, and I think we can make the case even more powerfully once we capture all of those benefits.
Oh, data and ROIs. Let's talk about ROIs. And as long as we were talking about the new financial literacy, let's talk about the new ROI. Does anyone know what Tim Cook of Apple said yesterday about ROI and his investors who want to buy ROI in Apple? Yeah, if ROI is the only thing you look at, don't buy my stock. Basically, that's what he said. I don't entirely agree with that, but if the current measurements of ROI are what you look at in today's data and today's numbers, then I completely agree with him. So like we need a new financial literacy, we need a new measurement of ROI. What actually is the investment, all right? The investment in people, the investment in governance, the investment in principles, the investment in culture. This is tough to measure, but we have to try. Just because it's hard to do doesn't mean we don't do it. So the new ROI includes different data. It includes the most material factors associated with any particular investment in any particular sector. You know, we talk about what can we do, what can we commit to do. There's an organization in the US called the SASB, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, all right? What SASB is doing is trying to figure out and give standards for disclosure and transparency of the factors in environmental, social, and governance performance that are most material to a particular sector. We look at the corporations, we look at the investors, and what is most material in that investment decision-making process. But we can't decide that right now because there are no standards. So the best companies in the world are doing such a